Hello, my name is Laurie Smith. Welcome to my video broadcast here tonight. This is with child abuse prevention. It's because April is the National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month down in the States. So usually every year I broadcast. I usually do one or two shows or something, because I like to keep my voice out there and just keep, the awareness going. But this year I decided to do the whole month of April, and I took a few days off, so it wasn't quite the full 30 days, but we're continuing on to the end of the month, and that's what we're doing here tonight. I have my good friend Laurie Jean here, Vanilla, and I've known her for many years, and she's um, a survivor herself. I won't tell her story, but um, she's also a musician and a singer, and she's a recording artist, so she's done some amazing work. She's got a beautiful voice. I'm so thankful that she's here with me tonight, and I'm glad to be here. This is a topic that's very disturbing for most people. Child abuse is not fun, to think about. It's not a fun topic to talk about, and so a lot of people don't want to talk, don't want to deal with it. It's really no wonder, and the issue is that children are dying, and we all need to do what we can, to change this mess for the children of tomorrow, right? So, you know, all of our voices are really important in this, and we all need to have a say in this. And we all need to be protecting children, right? In your own, capacity. If you have children yourself, protect your own children. If you, and your children have children in your area, small children, you need to just keep an eye out and make sure that they're not being abused, right? So important. Thanks for sharing, Lori. I appreciate it. That's awesome. And people can catch the archives. I just keep them here on my YouTube channel, and I just keep talking. And I've had so many wonderful people leave me such great comments, and really, a lot of words of encouragement to keep going. And I really appreciate it because it does help me to keep going. So I thank you all very much for your support. I'm a survivor myself of child abuse, and my siblings as well. So it wasn't just me. I'm just the last born in the family, but my siblings were abused. My parents were abused. Abuse just ran. It was in our family. It was a cyclical thing. I don't really know if my grandparents were abused, but I wouldn't doubt it because they abused my parents, and so it just continued on. So I decided to go public and talk about this stuff. Very important that for all of us to get involved in some way. And I thought, what can I do? I mean, I can talk from experience because I know what it is to grow up in abuse. Um, we were abused all of our lives, so it wasn't like the abuse just happened for a year or something, and then everything was okay. It was never okay. It was never okay all the way through all of our lives, and my family just destructed, and there's only one of us left besides myself. um, so I just know what this is all about, and so I decided, I'm just going to start speaking. So that's what I'm doing here. And so, if the topics of abuse bother you, child abuse and stuff, you need to make the right decision for yourself, whether you should be listening, and you wouldn't be hurting my feelings if you just really don't want to listen to this. A lot of people who work with, like teachers, CPS, Child Protection Services people. I have counselors listening to my stuff, therapists and stuff, psychotherapists listening to my stuff, and just to hear it from a survivor who's willing to be honest about my experience. I can't really talk for my siblings, but I do talk for myself, and so a lot of people and a lot of survivors listen to my stuff, and because I did so much work on the adult survivor issues, and it's just so insane how many people have been abused, and in a world where where's the help? Where's the help going to come from? So many times it's so hard and so difficult to find help, to find the right help for yourself. I know for myself, like I decided to go self help. I talked about that last night. But whatever way it is that you decide to do it, if you're a survivor of abuse, just get help. You certainly do deserve help. No child should ever be abused, and we didn't deserve that. I know I didn't, and no child does. So, we deserve help, and that's all there is to it. So you have to keep looking until you find what works for you. So I did put the links in there. We're talking about the effects of child physical abuse on children, and we're sort of winding up, through the end of the month here, and this is, really horrible what all the different types of abuse do, with the effects of all the different types of abuse, the effects on the children. It's just crazy, and you know, people don't think about this stuff, especially if they haven't been abused. What this damage really is, like if it doesn't kill the child, they're going to have to live with a lifetime of certain effects from the abuse, whether it was physical, emotional, psychological abuse, neglect, child sexual abuse, and all that stuff. So I thought we'll just cover some of these, and I'll just talk from my own experience as well. I did put a couple links into the show page info, and there's one that's it's at least got some info. It's healthyplace.com. They actually do have quite a lot of articles on there looking at the issues of child abuse, all the different issues sort of related to it. I've actually looked at their stuff for many years, over the years, and it's quite, I don't know, there's quite extensive, a lot of info there, and also an article from Nationwide Children. Um, this is a not for profit, and it is out of Columbus, Ohio. It's called Nationwide Children's Hospital. There's like a little article there. It's not very lengthy. It does have some info, but there's a couple pieces of info on there that I wanted to look at because I just thought it's so important. So we'll pick that up at the end. And I want to start, and you can grab these links. They're in the show page, healthyplace.com, and it's titled "Effects of Child Physical Abuse." It's by Samantha Gluck, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's Samantha Gluck. And we're not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to take sort of a look at the issues. A lot of people don't realize that child abuse, especially child physical abuse, it often leads to death. Children are killed all the time because of the physical abuse they're suffering, neglect, child physical abuse. Um, this is deadly, absolutely deadly. And it's not a spanking. It's not a disciplinary action. Abuse is not discipline, and discipline is not abuse. You know, child abuse is the intent to hurt and harm a child. It's done with the intent to damage the child. They possibly may not have meant to kill the child, but the abuse, was too harsh and it kills the child. Children are dying all the time. We see the headlines out there. The human body just can't take that kind of stuff, and especially small children. You think about the damage, an adult can do to another adult, and they do, right? Sadly enough, and then you think about an adult inflicting that kind of physical violence on a small child's body. It's not going to be okay for that child. You know, there's, any number of issues, physically can come about because of that. The main ones that they talk about is brain damage, because that's a serious issue. Effects of child physical abuse, they say, may last a lifetime and can include brain damage and hearing and vision loss, resulting in disability. Even less severe injuries can lead to the abused child developing severe emotional, behavioral, or learning problems. Injuries to, less severe, like, it's all severe, if you ask me. Damaging a child like that, it's a huge issue. Injuries to a child's growing brain can result in cognitive delays and severe emotional issues, problems that could adversely affect his or her quality of life forever. And this is just it. Children, especially head injuries, are such a huge problem, for small children. Small children fall and hurt themselves, and but you can imagine a small child being, thrown into a wall, or they have their head slammed into objects, and um, it's an adult can hardly survive anything like that. So you got to think about a small child being able to survive something like that, and it's not funny. I experienced a lot of physical abuse, and as a young child, as a very young girl, and all of my siblings did. My parents weren't just beating on me. um, they were abusing us all. They just thought corporal punishment, that's the way you do it. You just beat your children, you throw them against the walls, you just do whatever you want to do them to hurt them. They were their intent was to hurt us. Um, and I suffered a lot of head trauma as a young child, and just being thrown into walls, especially from my dad. And I have neck damage. It's actually nerve damage in my right behind in my neck because he threw me into a wall when I was 9. Literally shook me and threw me straight back into a wall. And now I can't feel that part of my neck on my back there, and it's been damaged like that since I was 9. So it's never gotten better. Um, this is just the kind of stuff that can happen, you know. My mom actually could have killed me by beating me with a rolling pin one time, cracking my head open, and she she hit me so hard that I flew off the back with the chair into a corner of a dryer, like the corner of a dryer, and my temple. And that could have been a real problem. Like, I'm really at the time I was thinking, well, I'm just trying to stay alive here. um, you know, Now that I'm an adult and sort of think about this stuff, it's just amazing that there wasn't some brain damage. Maybe there was a little bit. I really don't know. All I know is I function on one level quite well, and on other levels not so well. And so I'm sure there's some damage done. Obviously, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Children just little babies, little toddlers being thrown into walls and bounced off things. You see this in the headlines quite a bit, and especially in that purple period where the baby's, crying and crying and crying, and the parents aren't coping, and that's a time when abuse can be a real problem because parents are trying to get the baby to shut up, you know, and they think, well, if I just knock the baby out, we can all get some sleep. And so that's sad, but that's just the issues. And we see this all the time. I'm actually going to do a show on shaken baby syndrome here in a couple of days, SBS shaken baby syndrome. So important that people realize that this is the effects from that on these children. I did studies on this years and years ago, looking into these issues. And, these children who are who are inflicted with this SBS shaken baby syndrome thing, they're in wheelchairs. They're quadriplegics. They're not functioning hardly at all. Uh, their quality of life is like zero. You know what I mean? And the abusers are probably just walking free. You know, it's really distressing, but this is life. You're on this planet. It's distressing, and I just think there needs to be very, very, very tough penalties for abusers who hurt and abuse their children and are found completely 100% guilty. Absolutely. Because it's not right. It's just absolutely not right. They said some effects of child physical abuse may manifest in high risk behaviors, such as excessive promiscuity. Children who develop depression and anxiety due to their abusive past often turn to smoking or alcohol, illicit drug use, other unhealthy, dangerous behaviors to cope with their emotional, psychological scars. And they said, of course, long term things like smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, and promiscuity can lead to cancer, liver damage, and infection from STDs, sexually transmitted diseases and stuff. Um, they go on to talk about the primary effects of child abuse, and I mean, it's it's a hard issue because child abuse, like I was saying, it's not discipline. It's a parent who's going to either lash out at their child in anger because they're angry at that child, and so they're just going to give it to them, which is not good because an adult who weighs 150 to like I'm going to talk in pounds because I don't know the metric sense system. I live in Canada, but I don't do metrics. Um, Probably like an adult close to 200 pounds beating on a little child who doesn't even hardly weigh 50 pounds. You can imagine the damage that's going to be done. Um, it's not okay to lash out at your children in anger. That's abuse. Um, that's not discipline, and it's not going to help anything. There's a cool off period, where parents need to cool down. Sure, you're going to be angry with your children, absolutely, because they do things that do make you angry. But you need to calm down and say, let's take a breather, you know, and the child too. The child needs to take a breather too. Everybody take a breather and then sit down and figure out how you're going to deal with it properly. And I really wish that my parents would have done that. It would have been really nice because there were many times that I took some serious physical abuse because my mom was really angry and she was like, "Yeah, you're getting it. That's all there is to it." She rearranged my face, you know. I'm not going to get too gory here. I actually talked about all that on my Born in Hell series, video series here. If you actually want to watch those, I went to through all the details, and it's very distressing. Um, the issue is like there's better ways to handle, you know, your children than beating on them and abusing them. It's just I wish my parents would have done that. I really do, but they didn't have the coping skills. They didn't have. Um, they were in a domestic violence situation anyway. Didn't want all these children that they had popped out. Kept us around because they didn't want to look like bad parents, bad people, by letting all of these children go. And so, there you go. How sad, right? Instead of doing the right thing, they should have just let us go. We would have had a better chance. We wouldn't necessarily have not suffered abuse in a foster care system or, being adopted out or something. But the thing is at least the child has a chance, right? Instead of just, continuing to be abused their whole lives. Terrible. Let's see. Primary or first effects of child abuse occur during and immediately after the abuse. I mean, this is graphic. The child will suffer pain and medical problems from physical injury, and in severe cases, even death. The physical pain from cuts, bruises, burns, beatings, right? It will eventually pass, but the emotional pain will last long after the visible wounds have healed. And for some people, for myself, I mean, I'll just speak for myself. Some of this stuff just never goes away because my dad actually was going to beat me one time, and when I was really young, I was about 6 years old, and he grabbed my leg and was dragging me into the bedroom to beat on me. Um, and I held on to the door frame, like the door frame, because I knew he was obviously going to beat on me. Um, and he twisted my hip out of place and my hip has been damaged ever since. And now I have bad arthritis and bursitis in it, which I have to get cortisone shots for, and eventually probably hip replacement or something. But that's something I've had to live with all of my life, which has caused me a lot of pain and a lot of problems. I went to chiropractor for 5 years. And the chiropractor was like, they did x-rays, and he's like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, well, I can tell you exactly how that happened. you know and my hip was completely twisted around the socket, and then all the muscles grew in incorrectly around the bone that way. So then when he went to fix it, all the muscles were had to regrow around the bone, so it was incredibly painful. So people, parents, abusive type people, they don't care. you know my dad never cared that he hurt me. He never cared that he physically actually damaged my body. My mom neither. My mom didn't care. My mom ruined my vision. I'm sure of it. That rolling pin beating changed my vision for the rest of my life. And I have uh, uh, tinnitus, and if I turn my neck a certain way, I've got some problems. I can't hold on to things. I just drop them. So yeah, I've got some problems from the abuse. Not as bad as some kids. I mean, it's just so incredibly terrible, and people just think it's just discipline. It's like, no, that's not discipline, and it doesn't teach the child anything. um my mom used to threaten to kill me when she was beating on me, and she'd be like, it's my right, I can kill you if I want to. And when I was really little, I used to beg for my life. I'd be like, please don't kill me, mommy. I can remember these things very clearly. And then when I got older, I was just like, go ahead. My attitude was like, yeah, whatever, man. You've been threatening to kill me for years. Like, just do it, or just whatever. That's a sad, sad way to grow up, and that's exactly how I grew up. I used to tell her, just go ahead. Go ahead and kill me. I don't care. You've already killed me anyway. I really felt dead. It did. It killed my spirit. It killed my soul. I was beaten in public. I was beaten out in the front yard with people watching, neighbors, cars driving by. We lived on a busy street, and all these cars were driving by, and my mom was just giving it to me. And I'll never forget that because I was 11, going on 12 years old, so I was older. And I was like, God, these people aren't even going to stop and tell my mom anything. And they would just look, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm taking this beating in the front yard, laying in a cactus patch, you know. I wrote about that in my book actually because it was so traumatizing. I was just like, oh my God, all these people were watching and they were like, and I was like, okay, great. Now what do I do? Get up and go back in the house with my abuser, crazy mother, you know? I guess, you know what I mean? Like, unbelievable. No, no child should be treated like that. Um, so the emotional scars because of the physical abuse were very damaging, and um, you know, I used to hide black eyes and you know cover things up like bruises and stuff like that. My dad beat my brother up, and my mom sent him to school in a turtleneck in the middle of the summer in New Mexico. Way too hot to be going to school in a turtleneck. The nurse saw the bruises on his face and clued in right away. And not the nurse, but the teacher. So then she took him to the nurse. He said he was afraid to go home. They called the police, and my parents were busted on child abuse charges. They were busted, hauled into court. They were arrested and taken to court. And they were like, you can't be doing this to your children, man. You just can't be beating on them. And, my dad used to stomp on my brothers. I actually saw him stomping on them, literally with his feet, just stomping on them, kicking them. And then I think about my brothers and how messed up they really were. And I think, well, yeah, it's no wonder having a dad that doesn't care about you, doesn't love you, never wanted you, and just really likes to stomp on you, you know. That's just great. And everybody would run my brothers down because, oh, they were such losers. And, because they really got themselves in a lot of trouble as young adults and then they killed themselves. So there you go. But, it's such a tragic thing that children grow up in this. So even if it doesn't kill the child, it will kill the child. It kills your spirit, it kills your soul. I remember being about 12, 13, starting to feel like I didn't really want to be alive anymore. Really, from the age of 10, I told my mom to go ahead and kill me. I was like, I'm dead anyway. May as well just kill me. And, which got me another beating, but I was like, I don't care. Round two, I actually wrote about that in my book because she's severely rearranged my face. But the thing is from the age of 13, I actually um, started to sort of become suicidal. Like I was actually planning my suicides. So I wasn't attempting anything at that point, but I was planning them, and I really didn't want to be alive anymore. And that's sad. That's that whole issue of the emotional effects because of the abuse, and also, I mean, we were being abused psychologically, emotionally, verbally, and everything else, but a lot of it had to do with the physical abuse as well. So it's all part of it. Sometimes children are abused, verbally or emotionally, psychologically, but not physically. And that's just as bad. The physical abuse just says, well, you're just a dog. I can just beat on you and kill you, and you're nothing to me. The verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse says the same thing without the physical stuff. It's just as bad. Like, it's deadly. And people don't think that that type of abuse is really such a problem. And it's very much a problem. And people then have to try to figure this stuff out, usually much later in life because we're trying to push it down. We don't want to deal with it. Um, and then it eventually comes out. And when it does, it's a real problem because it's like, oh, now I got to really deal with this. And you know, it's not easy. So they said here the age at which the abuse occurs influences the way the injuries or any permanent damage affect the child. Infant victims of physical abuse have the greatest risk of suffering long term physical problems, such as neurological damage that manifests as tremors, irritability, lethargy, stuff like that. In more serious cases, the effects of child abuse can include seizures, permanent blindness, deafness, paralysis, mental development delays, and of course, death. So, the longer the abuse continues, the greater the impact on the child, regardless of the age. And that's just it. I mean, little babies, toddlers and stuff, their bodies can't take that kind of stuff. And we see this stuff in the headlines all the time. This is just rolling out, day after day. Somebody kills a little baby or an infant or a toddler, and their little bodies can't deal with that, you know? And it doesn't take much to kill a baby. And some, people They usually just get a little slap on the wrist by the judge, oh, you shouldn't have killed your child. That's the wrong thing to do. 2 years, but you're only going to serve 6 months because the rest of it's time served. There you go. So they're in for 6 months for killing a child, and then they get out and they go and they have another child and they kill that child too. You know, it's just not okay. It's not right. We need tougher penalties. We need people who actually care about children. Children have rights. That's why I'm a big promoter of children's rights, and I'm always talking about it. Probably annoys people, but I'm sorry. But I have to because children have rights. They have the right to life, just like you and me have the right to life. Children have that very same right. And they also have the right to not be abused. They actually have a couple more rights that adults don't have. There's because they're vulnerable. They need protection. And we won these child rights. It's only been since 1970s or 1980s where they actually the world governing body of governments actually said, okay, these are the child rights that every child actually should have. Some of the governments don't follow it, but the thing is it's there, and we have to stand up for these child rights. Children have the right to life, and these people have no right to take those children's lives, to kill them, and even if they don't kill them outright, the abuse ends up taking their life, and so it is it's murder or whatever, second degree, manslaughter, whatever. The issue is it's not okay, you know. But most people don't care about these children because they don't have a relationship with these children. They're babies, they're children, they're toddlers, they're 2-year-old, they're 4-year-olds. Nobody cares about them. And it's really, really sad because I do. Because I know what it's like to be kicked and punched and thrown into walls and bounced off of furniture, and beaten, and burned and strangled, sexually abused. And, I know what it's like. And these little kids out here, they're not going to make it. I made it, and that's why I was trying to kill myself for many years because I was like, this is hell. I'm tired. I don't want to even be here. And it's like now I'm thankful because these other little kids. I started to realize that these other little kids that are being killed, and if they had the chance, and they were cognitive enough, and somebody said, you know, would you still like to live, and to go on, they would have probably said yes. So I started to take my life, stop taking it for granted, and start living and saying, okay, I'm sure they would have loved to trade places with me. They would have loved to have a chance to live and go, go out on their first date, and get their first car, maybe get their first job, go to school, um, get married and have children. They're going to miss all of that because somebody just decided to beat them to death or kick them to death. So the issues, it's horrifying, and that's why I keep speaking out. I'm like, this is not okay. Like, why do people think this sort of thing is okay? And around the world, it's just been going on for so long. Not just North America. Around the world, it's kind of okay. You kill your kid, just bury him out in the backyard, no problem. At least we have rights over here where we can say, look, this is not okay. And we have people fighting for child rights, and that's great. So important that we keep doing it. Emotional effects of child physical abuse. The emotional effects of child physical abuse continue well after any physical wounds have healed. Numerous research studies conducted with abused children as subjects have concluded that a considerable number of psychological problems develop as a result of child physical abuse. And these children experience significantly more problems in their home lives, at school, and in dealing with peers than children from non abusive environments. Well, of course. Here's some of the things that they found: eating disorders, inability to concentrate, excessive hostility towards others, even friends, family members, depression, apathy, lethargy, sleep issues, insomnia, excessive sleepiness, sleep apnea. And they said physically abused children are predisposed to develop numerous psychological disturbances. They're more likely to have low self esteem, deal with excessive fear and anxiety, and act out aggressively towards their siblings and peers. That was kind of me. I had a lot of fear growing up in that environment, obviously. And, I loved my parents, believe it or not. I loved my mom, especially. I really didn't love my dad so much because I was like, he's such a so bad. He's just so horrible. I didn't like my dad that much, but I really, really loved my mom, and I felt sorry for her because she was abused by my dad. I knew this was going on, and I saw the fights. I saw actually he raped her in front of me one time when I was 6, and she was fighting. And it's like I felt sorry for my mom. I really did, but I was like, my older siblings would tell my mom, just leave him, just leave. You don't have to take the kids. Just get out and go. We'll have to manage, um, because they all felt sorry for my mom. We all did. And the thing is my mom could have got out when the social services were involved. When they got busted on and arrested on child abuse charges, they had the opportunity at that point to separate. My mom could have got help, and they didn't. No, just want to keep right on living that lifestyle. I can't figure that one out, but I never really will understand that. But oh well, too late now. But the issue is a lot of these abused children love their parents, and obviously, and don't want to necessarily be removed from their homes, and that's the problem. Um, you know, because I don't know how a parent could love a child and to love that child and actually be abusing that child. I don't think it's possible. I know my mom never loved us. I found the truth out at the age of 29. I already knew that because I had her fist in my face all the time, and she was telling me all the time that she hated my guts and that she wished I was dead and that I never should have been born. I should have been born stillborn and all this stuff I heard all throughout my childhood, especially and into my youth. And so I knew this, and I knew that my other siblings weren't really wanted either. But then my mom actually told me to my face that none of us were wanted and that she didn't want children. She wanted to be an artist. She was actually really good art. She was a beautiful artist. She could draw like nobody's business. She could draw the most amazing, she could have been a catalog artist. Like she was so talented. But the issue is she wanted to be an artist. She didn't want to have children. So I'm like, so you put us through all of this garbage and you abused us and you and dad and you ended up in court and at that time you could have given us all up. I was a baby at this time. When they were arrested and busted on child abuse charges, I was like probably just barely born. I was probably not even 1 year old, maybe 2 years old. I just remembered later on the social workers coming around to check on me. But I told her, I said, what were you thinking? You could have just let us all go. I said, you can't tell me you put us through all that for nothing. She said, you meant nothing to me. You meant absolutely nothing to me. And I'm just like, okay, I think the love is done here now. I don't think I love you anymore. Um, you know, it's like, that's not love. Abuse is not love, right? And so it's a real harsh situation for these little children out here who really sort of believe that abuse may be love. You know what I mean? It's very confusing. Um, I think, for myself, I don't know if I so much had eating. I have addiction problems, is what I've got. And I did a lot of drugs from the time I was like 12 right on to about 22. I talked about that last night. I got off the drugs at 22. But, I did a lot of drugs. I was thinking that I could go ahead and just die and it wouldn't matter. Drug overdose, whatever, because that's the issue. I was always kind of planning my suicides. And I thought, if I OD, it doesn't matter. I'll be gone and I won't have to deal with this stuff anymore. Um, and I was just high because that was the way that I could actually live and push all that stuff down. As long as I was high, basically I'm somebody else. You know what I mean? And so from the time of 12 to 22, that's what I did. I did drugs. I did a lot of drugs. And, I'm glad that I got off of them and I was able to get off of them. I'm very, very glad. But I do have an addictive personality, and I'm sure it's from the abuse. My nerves are shot, and it's just from listening, watching my parents try to kill each other almost on a nightly basis. I mean, my nerves are shot. I never got any sleep in that house. None of us did. My dad was always threatening to kill us in the middle of the night. I talked about that on the Familicide show here just earlier this month. And, hi Mandy, how are you? I'm glad to see you. I hope you're well. Yeah, it's good to see you too. I know I hadn't been around for a while, but I decided to broadcast for April, Child Abuse Awareness Month. And yeah, so many people have gone through this stuff and know all about it. I still don't sleep well. I never have. I think it's just, you know, I don't know. It's just ingrained in me. I don't sleep, and I never have, unfortunately. Um, and so it's been hard on my body. It's been hard on my mind. And I mean, I don't sit there and worry at night. You know what I mean? When I was a child, I did. I was worried about my dad killing us. And then when I was 8, I was worried about my brother raping me because he would do this in the middle of the night sometimes the daytime if nobody was around. But yeah, my 13 years older brother, who was 21 at the time, was living in the home. And when nobody was around, he would rape me for a year until my mom kicked him out and sent him with a one-way ticket to Canada. So with nothing done, who knows? Hopefully he didn't sexually assault any other people up in Canada. How are we gonna know unless you know what I mean? Like he's dead, long gone. Committed suicide at the age of 33. So the issue is like she was just that's her way of dealing with the situation. We're not going to deal with it. She was being abused by my dad and raped by my dad, so I think she really could not cope. And I was 8. What am I supposed to do? Tell a teacher? No way. Are you kidding me? I was ashamed. I was afraid. I had a lot of fear, and especially at that age, my mom was my main abuser. My dad was threatening to kill us and to kill himself, and my brother was raping me. I'm like, I had a lot of fear and a lot of problems, and I just used to sit in class and just hope that nobody could tell. You know what I mean? And then when we had the sex ed courses that came into the classroom when I was 10, they started that in that year, and it was in 1975. And I was sitting there and I was just shaking because they were talking about all this very, very stuff that was very intimate and, sort of, especially to a young girl. And I mean, my dad was raping my mother. My brother had raped me for almost a year, caused me serious damage, which I talked about last night on the show, to my body. It caused me to be barren. And I was sitting there just thinking, oh my God, what if they know? What if they know? What if they could tell? That's the only fear just took over me. I was like, at that point, I should have told somebody. See what I mean? That's what abuse does, right? Shuts people down, shuts them up. And I should have told somebody. Would I have gotten help? Maybe not, because it's not a perfect system. And sometimes those teachers don't do the right thing. But no, I told my mom, and she didn't do anything. She didn't get me any help. So, but I was had a lot of fear as a child. I was afraid I was always afraid that my mom would either kill my dad in self-defense or that my dad would kill my mom because he was abusing her. I was afraid that my dad would kill one of my brothers. He was always abusing them. I was kind of a little bit afraid that my mom might kill me because she was always threatening to. So I'm going to kill you. That's what I had to hear all the time. I was like, I'd be running for my life. I'm like, oh Jesus, she's going to kill me. For nothing, for nothing. Um, it's really sad. And children, they should not have to grow up like that. It's this is not okay. But the really heartbreaking stuff is these little toddlers, little 2-year olds, little babies, 6 months old, and their life is just snuffed out by somebody who just has a has some sort of issue going on that just lets them think that they have the right to take that child's life, and they don't. And it's not okay. And we need tougher penalties. We need stricter sentencing. We need major penalties because that would cause people to start thinking about what they're doing when they're around children. It's kind of like, I'm going to get life. You know what I mean? If I beat and batter this child and I get caught or sexually abuse this child, I'm going to get life sentence. Maybe I better not. You know what I mean? People might think about it, but right now they get 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years. Sometimes in a huge case that gets a lot of publicity, they get 5 years for killing a child or killing two or three and stuffing them in a garbage bag. This is what these women do. Women kill children too. Lots of women do. My mom was threatening to kill me for years. My grandmother, my mom's mom, killed one of her sons. My mom never forgave her mother for that. And, you know, um, my grandmother was a highly abusive, crazy woman. And that's, pretty well what my mom's problem was. And she was abused by this very crazy woman who killed one of her sons, my uncle. So, my mom was devastated by that. My mom took a lot of abuse because she was the oldest in the family, and she didn't want her mother beating on her siblings who were younger than her. So she would take a lot of the abuse. And my grandma didn't mind horse whipping my mother and just beating her. And so I felt sorry for my mom. And then my mom married my dad thinking, oh, now maybe this is life will get better, you know what I mean? And then my dad starts abusing her, you know, because he's psychologically unwell. He was abused himself. And it's like, what a life. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I don't tell my stories, my parents' stuff to run my parents down. I just want people to know the dynamics of abuse and how this can happen. And, the issues. My parents weren't alcoholics, they weren't drinkers, they didn't do drugs. They worked, they just had major difficulties dealing with things and coping with things, and really should have got help for their marital problems. That would have been a big start, and their own psychological problems, right? So that's why at the age of 42, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. you know, I'm not doing this suicidal ideation game anymore. Continuing this garbage on. I'm going to get help. I'm going to do what my parents didn't do. And I started to wake up and smell the coffee. And I'm like, oh, I see what I've been doing. The exact same thing my parents were doing. It's like, you know, let's get some help here. And that's why I went public with my stuff. And I'm like, you know, you can do this too. There's no reason why we can't get help and stop the cycle. Even on ourselves. I mean, I was self sabotaging my own life all the time because I was abused. I didn't really know anything else. And so, I started to realize I need to see this stuff so that I can understand what I'm doing, and then I can change what I'm doing. And I can change it so I can stop sabotaging my life. You know what I mean? It's taken me a lot of work and a long time to do this stuff. It didn't happen overnight. It took me years and years to look through this stuff, sift through the information out there, apply it to my own situation, work through it, and be like, I got to start recognizing these flags. You know what I mean? So I'm still working on it. It's something I'm still working on. Absolutely. And it's hard. It is, Mandy. I know. I know it. And my mom tried that stuff with me too, right up until she passed away. And then when my mom died, I thought, oh, finally. I mean, I was sad when my mom died. I really was. She was 68, and I was 30. And I was sitting there, and I thought, well, she can never hurt me again. After we went to say our last goodbyes to her, and we all said the right things to her, which was really nice. None of us were mean to her like she was us to us. She was terribly mean to us and horribly abusive. We were nice to her and very good to her, which was the right thing to do. Um, and then she passed away, and I was like, well, a bit of relief came over me, and I'm like, she will never be able to hurt me again, ever. And then, within about 6 months after she passed away, another whole set of nightmare stuff started happening because I started to, this little girl that I used to be, realized that my mom was dead, and that little part of myself who was being beaten and battered by her and kicked around and spit on, and who just wanted her to love me. And that's the psychological damage. It was like I just wanted her to love me. That's all it was to it. I was just this little girl, and all I wanted was her love, and all I got was pain from her. Pain and misery in every way, psychologically, emotionally, verbally, physically. And it's like I had a lot of work to do, and I didn't start any of it until I was 42. So it took me another 12 years of just dealing with more of my own inabilities to cope and, suicidal ideation type stuff before I started realizing that, hey, I need help, man. I don't want to do this. I don't want to follow and copy what my parents did. I want to get help and have a good life. And I wish that my brothers would have done that, the two that killed themselves. Um, you know, and it's just sad. And my siblings that suffered in the same home. They all had kind of sad lives, and it's really sad. And so I'm out here. I'm like, no, no, I'm not doing that, man. I'm gonna do. I've always been one to kind of do what I like to do, and so I talked about that last night, and I thought, I'm not gonna just let this abuse destroy me, and I'm not going to allow what I went through destroy the rest of my life. which is what my parents did. And they were abused as children, and then they just kept it right on going. And their lives were just, that's all it was, just abuse and garbage. And I thought, I'm not doing that. No, I'm going to have a good life. So I started, learning how to play guitar and things that I really wanted to do, and having great conversations with people, and, and having friends in my life that I care for and they care for me. Just all the simple things, it doesn't have to be crazy, and it doesn't have to be the party scene. It can be just good, you know. And I don't allow people to abuse me ever. And I mean, I've had to tell a lot of bosses off because I'm like, I don't take abuse from anybody. I'm sorry. You're looking at the wrong person here. I ratted out my parents, right? I'll rat out anybody. I don't care. It's like nobody's going to ever abuse me ever again. That's all there is to it. I put my foot down. I'm like, no, I got boundaries set. And I treat people with respect and with dignity, and I expect that back. And that's just the way I roll. I can't help it. It's like, so, I've had to tell some bosses off. But oh well, and sometimes I have to leave the job because I'm like, that's just the way it is. I'm just not allowing that type of behavior around me anymore. So as a child, I couldn't help it. I had to take whatever my parents wanted to dish out. It was a beating, or, just name calling and being spit on or whatever. My mom used to spit on me. She liked to spit in my face. And I mean, that's a sad situation. I used to look at her like, I was like, are you like my enemy? You're like the devil or something, man. That's what was in my mind. And I mean, like, I think she's like evil. You know what I mean? Who would do that to their child, right? And she was just hurt. She just wanted to hurt me. Just anything she'd do. She did that to my other siblings too. It wasn't just me. And you know, it's taken a lot. It took a lot for me to actually like learn to love myself and all the wounded parts. You know what I mean? And I talk a lot about that stuff in my own, all the stuff that I broadcast here. It's been a long journey, and to get in touch with that stuff, right? It's kind of like all those mental images, really, from the abuse. And we're talking about child physical abuse here tonight. Just looking in the mirror and just realizing that the damage is done. You know what I mean? And it's just horrible, the stuff that people do to children, and then they're left to pick up the pieces, right? If they live and survive, right? So um, these little children out here, they sure don't deserve that, right? I think people need to stop thinking it's okay to abuse children. There's just there's there like people say, how do we reach people? How do you reach the abusers that are doing this, right? And there are people working on this in programs that are actually pretty okay. I mean, they're actually making progress, but it's slow. It's so slow because it costs money, and the government doesn't consider children to be all that important. That money is, they don't want to put that much money into those programs because children are just like, whatever, they're expendable. They're not paying taxes. They're future taxpayers, but nobody really seems to care. It's kind of like they would be future taxpayers if they live long enough. But it's kind of like, oh, children, who cares? You know what I mean? That nobody seems to care that children are ending up in body bags because somebody's kicked them and beat them and strangled them and sexually abused them. It's just not okay. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just out here just saying, you know what? This is wrong, incredibly wrong. And you know, yeah, that's what I had to do with my family, Mandy. Just no contact, and it's really sad, but I'm in a better place because of it, because I don't have that, because the dysfunction in my, I'm just speak about my own family. We all grew up abused in this home, my siblings. So none of us got along at all. And even as adults, none of us got along. Because it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's not that we were remembering, okay, well, you got me in trouble with mom, or you got me in trouble. It's not so much that, it's just that everybody in my family is trying to tear each other apart. So it's like as adults, it's kind of like we do better off apart. Like we don't do well together. So trying to do the family thing has never been really okay for us, and unfortunately, because we just tear each other down, and that's not okay. You know, like I told my siblings, is that the two that were still living, because everybody else has already passed away. I said, I'm on my healing journey. Like I'm making progress here. I've got boundaries set, what I will allow in my life, what I won't. I'm not going to get into these abusive screaming matches with you people anymore. I'm just not doing it. Like if we can't talk and have a normal conversation, this is how it went. And I told them, I said, I'm cutting you guys off because they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be able to continue to berate me, scream, yell, holler, throw fits. And I'm like, done with that. No, no more of that. So, and my sister's 5 years older than me. She used to beat on me when I was little, but I kind of just, it's like whatever. I kind of let that go. I'm like, okay, whatever. She's quite a bit bigger than me, so she could take me. She could knock me down. But the thing is even years later, as an adult, she's threatening to beat me up, and I'm like, I'm bigger than you now, and I'm a lot tougher. Take you out. You know what I mean? I'm quite my sister, a lot stronger. And I told her, I said, "You're seriously want to 50-year-old woman?" Like I'm like, "What's the matter with you?" It's terrible what people do and what abuse does to people. Um, just some people continue this stuff on their whole life, and that's why I was like, I'm going to get help and I'm going to learn how to enjoy life for what it is. And because I can't change the past, I had to learn how um, to see things differently about myself, because that abuse painted a picture of me that I'm ugly, I'm worthless. Obviously, I'm worthless. You know what I mean? My mom beat me, my dad beat on me, my brother raped me. Nobody, cared, and they still don't. And the ones that well, there's only a couple living now, but I had to learn. I had to learn how to honor myself and say, okay, I was rejected as a child. I was not wanted. Um, abused horribly in every way. I'm like, so what did I miss? I missed out on what that thing that children need in a family situation where they're in a normal family where they're not being abused, where there's respect shown, you know proper respect, dignity. Dignity was just not something that was going on in our home. You know what I'm saying? Not when that kind of abuse is going on. There is no dignity. So I really had to go back and start working on myself and all of my inner wounded parts, and kind of go back and reparent myself, you know, and just say, no, I didn't deserve that. No child ever does, and no child's perfect. No parent's perfect, but there's no reason to abuse. There's no excuse for abuse. So, I had to go back and actually really learn how to love myself and how to, take care of myself and how to be good to myself, and then how to be good to others, and not continue this cycle on, right? Because I mean, yeah, there's times. I mean, when I have a bad day, I mean, the first thought that comes to my mind is drugs. I'm like, man, if I could just get a hold of some drugs, or you know what I mean? Because it's just ingrained. It's just in there. And I'm like, no, we don't do that anymore. We drink coffee. You know what I mean? Um, so I might have a candy bar or something like that. It's like, okay, I'll allow myself to have a candy bar. I'm having a bad day. This kind of stuff, I've just learned how to just try to do the right thing for myself, the right thing by myself. Whereas years ago when I was young, I didn't know how to do that because I wasn't shown how to take care of myself. So I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And so now it's kind of like, it's a slow process. I don't know if I'll get there before I pass away, but I'm still working on it. You know what I mean? It takes time to do this stuff, to learn how to take care of ourselves. If you were neglected or abused as a child, it's really tough to come from this. But that's why I thought, you know what? There's these little children out here, who are being killed and murdered, and I'm sure they would love to have the opportunity to, have their first boyfriend, their first girlfriend, their first kiss, the first love of their life, their first, their wife, their children. They're not going to get that opportunity. They're going to be killed. And so I decided that I would actually, it's a disservice to them and to other survivors, to say that I don't appreciate being here and that I'm not happy that I survived. I'm actually very happy. I'm glad to be here today, and I wasn't years ago. So it's gotten better over the years. Since I've been on my healing journey, and that's why I had to cut my family off because I don't play that role anymore. They want me to play that old role that I was playing before, these old roles within the family, and I just don't play those roles anymore. So I'm like, sorry, bye. You go do your own thing. I'm having a good time over here. And that's for an abuse survivor, that's I would say that's victory. You know, that's my victory. But there's these little children out here tonight. They're not going to get no victory, man. They're just going to die. They're going to die in their cribs. They're going to die on the bedroom floor. You know, it's going to bleed to death or whatever. Nobody's going to get them any help. And that's just sad, right? My grandmother killed her son. He was like a teenager, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the show, and he did something that made her angry or whatever. She beat him, horsewhipped him, and then made him sleep in the barn. And it was wintertime, and he died from pneumonia. He got pneumonia and died. So she didn't kill him outright, but she killed him because she was responsible for his death. And even teenagers are killed by their parents. It's not just little children. You know what I mean? It's so sad. These headlines are rolling, and you know, so we that's why I'm just all about child rights, child abuse prevention. If you're a parent, make sure nobody's abusing your child. If your children have little playmates and little friends, make sure they're not being abused. You got to know who their teachers are. You got to know who their coaches are, who the school counselors are. You got to know who all these people are, and check out all the stuff, because abusers are where the children are, and they like to get jobs around children. So quite often they will get teaching jobs because it's easy, because it's like, hey, the kids are all right here. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that going on. You got to know who your pastor is, who your priests are. I'm serious. There's a lot of abuse in church because that's where kids are. And they're like, yeah, we got ourselves a pick of the cream of the crop here. And they don't care. And they're looking for the vulnerable children whose parents aren't paying attention. That's who they're looking for. And neighbors, watch the neighbors, man. Neighbors, seriously, they want to do stuff with your children. You thinking, oh, isn't that nice? They want to take our children on, my child on a camping trip. You better really seriously know who these people are. You know what I mean? Abusers are everywhere, and not just sexual abusers, but just all sorts of abusers. If you have children, you got to protect them, right? We're gonna do show. You can get that information. Just type it in. Oh, child safety, protecting your child from abuse. You don't have to wait for my show. Get the information. Learn how to protect your children. You know, if you're a young person and you're watching this, because I may have young people watching my stuff because I was abused as a child. If you're a young person and you're watching this, you get some help. You do not allow yourself to be abused. Not ever. I don't care what age you are. You tell somebody, as a matter of fact, don't tell one person, you tell about 10 people, 20 people. Seriously, tell as many people as you can, and you get some help. Do not allow yourself to be abused. Nope. And not, if you just tell one person, they may not be able to help you, and then you'll and nobody will help you. You need to tell like as many people as you can and get some help. And if you're an adult who's being abused, you need to get out, man. You know what I mean? Because your life is worth more than that. And that's just the truth of it. We only have this one time around here, as far as we know. And people will stay in abuse, like my mom. I look a lot like my mom, so when I see myself, I'm basically looking at my mother. And I mean, I just saw what she went through with my dad, and she actually was a very beautiful person, but she was so ruined by this abuse, and she wouldn't get out. She was just stuck. It was like my dad, even though he didn't have her chained up, my dad had her chained up. So in other words, she was chained up in her mind. She was not able to get free, and that's not okay. You know what I'm saying? Um, so we deserve, like, I don't care what anybody says. There's a lot of people that say that people don't deserve better, but they do. That's why we all understand what dignity is and human dignity. And the thing is that there is very much so. It's a human state of quality, that we all understand what it is. We all should be living a life a dignified life with nobody mistreating us and nobody abusing us, because it's not okay. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And if you need any information, you can get a hold of me on my. I've got all my info down below there and discussion and about and how to contact me. And if I can help you with any information or whatever, let me know. Thanks for being here. I'll be back on tomorrow night, same time, same place, 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I just don't do the show page until tomorrow, so I don't ding people with too many show pages, right? Because I have a lot of subscribers and they'll get too many dings and it gets annoying. So I'll be back on tomorrow night, same time, same place. Have a great night, everybody. Take care of yourselves, okay? Bye, Mandy. Bye, guys. We'll see you.